So we're here, the 24th edition of Muscat International Book Fair, and guess who's with us? The guest author, Thomas Friedman. We've enjoyed your lecture, your presentation, and here you are. You have quite a few questions. How does it feel to be here at Muscat?
Well, it's great. I was here first 40 years ago, so it's changed a lot. There was no amazing convention center like this, and I've been so impressed by the book festival. I didn't know what to expect. You know, the book festival invited me to come talk about my book. I thought, oh, that's nice. I haven't been to Oman in a long time. See a nice little book festival, and then I come here and I see this giant hall that's I'm told has had 1.6 million visitors, or roughly. That's like almost half the country came to the book festival.
That's true.
And I thought, wow, if just half of them bought my book.
They did, because the book is out.
That's too bad. But I'm just so impressed at the quality and the simple energy and participation. It's really impressive.
Now, actually looking at you as a columnist, as a writer, the future of writing, because in your talk, you talked about 2007 and how it changed everything.
Yes.
We all missed it because of the recession. You said the year 2008.
Yeah.
Now, what is the future of writing from print?
Well, it's a good question, Lakshmi. And what I tell everyone is that, in a way, everything has changed and nothing has changed. Okay? So everything's changed in that we're filming an interview here.
Yes.
With your camera woman with her phone. I mean, 10 years ago, unimaginable. Okay, and so that's like really cool. But at the end of the day, good journalism is a combination of good reporting and then good writing that brings that journalism alive. Great journalism is a product of great reporting and great writing. And it doesn't matter whether it's on a cell phone, a typewriter, a laptop, a desktop, skywriting in the air. At the end of the day, I always try to keep in mind, it's about reporting. It's still about that. And that's what I was saying to one of your colleagues earlier. You know, at the end of the day, you only go as far as your reporting and writing takes you. And what platform it's on doesn't really matter.
And what would you say is the future for newspapers? Because you're a very renowned journalist, columnist in one of the most reading newspapers in the world. And today we're seeing the social media and online digital media taking over. What do you see the future for print newspapers?
So for newspapers that are print alone, there is no future. But for a newspaper like the New York Times that made the transition to digital online, so we still print a newspaper every day on dead trees, on paper, and we sell about 1 million or so copies of those. But online, the audience is infinite. I mean, maybe 20 million people might read you online in a given day. And it turns out that there is a market for quality news, quality journalism, because we're going to make $1 billion this year. $1 billion at the New York Times just by people paying for subscriptions online. Subscriptions and other, online. And so that's enabled us to make the transition to digital.
So it's a vision and it's a process. Like we said, nothing will change, but things have changed.
Yeah.
But the digital media and the cyberspace has definitely changed our ethical values from marketing to our viewpoints and values in general. What would you like to say?
Well, the biggest thing that changed is that now there are so many people with a voice. And I happen to think that's fantastic. I mean, anyone who has a cell phone is a paparazzi. They're a filmmaker. They're a television studio. They're a newspaper. And so access to have and through Twitter, to have your opinion shared around the world has never been greater. This is a golden age for that. At the same time, when everyone's out there, to be noticed is also increasingly difficult. And so
to
stand out. And I still believe that to stand out, it's about good reporting and good analysis,
Now, it's an honor to be with the three-time award-winning personality here, Pulitzer 3 times. How does that feel?
Well, it feels wonderful that your colleagues, because it's done by your colleagues, felt your reporting, stood out. In my case, it was reporting first from Beirut and then from Israel and then on 9/11. So, I'm very proud of that. But this is a business that I always, tell young journalists, that to be I think to be a good journalist, you have to have two things. First is you have to like people. I have to like people. And if you like people, they like you back in the sense that they'll be happy to talk to you. And they'll actually share the music of their lives, the crazy things they hope, they fear, they desire. And if you can't hear that music, you'll never be able to play the music. So that's number one. But number two, and even more importantly, I think to be a good journalist or columnist, you have to be a good listener. And it's for two reasons. And the second reason is more important than the first.
Okay.
The first reason is what you hear, what you learn when you listen.
True.
You'll learn things when you listen that you didn't know. But the second reason is what you say when you listen. Because listening is a sign of respect. And if I just listen to you, tell me about your hopes and fears for Oman, your country, your career, your newspaper. If I listen to you, and I mean deep listening, not just wait for you to stop talking, there's a very good chance you'll let me say something to you, maybe be a critical thing, or ask you something very tough. Because I've listened to you, you've said, this person respects me. If I think you don't respect me, you can't tell me it's dark outside, okay? And so, I'm a tough columnist. I don't go around the Middle East saying, you're all wonderful, you're all great, not to Israel, not to Arab countries, But people at the end of the day, I think, want to hear what I have to say because they know, rightly, that I respect them. I have very high expectations for this region.
And how did you reach that stage where you actually let others know that you respect?
Yeah. Partly largely by listening. Yeah. Letting them and listen and being affected by that. But I do have high expectations, high hopes, and they know I'm not here to put anybody down. I think the men and women of this region, young people in particular, they're capable of competing and playing on any playing field. If they have the opportunity, if they're given the ability to realize their full potential. And so, whether I do things, have opinions that people get angry about, or not, they know it comes from a place of believing and respecting the potential of the people here.
And a bit of a hurt because you mean well.
And you can mean well and get things wrong too. And I've done that also. So, but at the end of the day, it's I'm not here to put anybody down. I'm here to actually amplify when people are doing the right things. And so that brings me to this great book festival. I'm so pleased to be here when I see a country investing this kind of money in something like this that promotes reading, insight, growth, curiosity. I'm happy to be part of it.
Actually, it's very interesting to be around Mr. Thomas Friedman because he's got these interesting quotes. You talked about peace, and you said it's the ones who have the courage who want and adopt peace. And if you want to be a good journalist, you said when you're a humble reporter, you're a good journalist.
Yes.
And I guess that comes with the listening part too.
Yeah.
3 tips for a good writer, what would you say?
Well, I have 3 tips for a good writer. If you want to be a journalist,
Yes.
Tip number 1 is write. Because the only way you really learn how to be a reporter, either for TV or print, is you got to write. Tip number 2 is write. Write. And tip number 3 is write. Because the only way you really learn how to do this job is by doing this job.
Okay.
No one can really teach you how to be a columnist. Yeah. Practice, deal with situations, deal with writing, being criticized for your writing. I'm criticized all the time. This is not a friend growth industry if you want to do it right. You have to take chances and have your colleagues ask you tough questions, answer those questions. But the only way you get the experience is by doing it. So it doesn't matter whether you're writing for the Observer. Excuse me. It doesn't matter whether you're writing for the Observer, the Washington Post, the New York Times. The point is to be out there, engaging with people, engaging with ideas. Write. And if you do it well, people will notice.
One last question.
Please, let me just get a drink here. Thanks. Please.
The last question we have for you is, you've always written, it's comments, it's columns, your thoughts.
Right.
What do you actually think about, of course, it's a great book that is being sold out here. Thank you for being late again. It's about reality, real life stories, like the car parking person we talked about. Would you ever do fiction?
That's a very good question. And the reason is no,
Oh.
because I find reality so much more interesting than fiction. I mean, the stuff I've encountered in 40 years of being a reporter, I couldn't possibly make up half of it.
It's stranger than fiction,
Exactly,
reality.
it's much better.
Mr. Thomas Friedman, thank you so much for being with us and
Thank
giving
you,
us your time.
It was a
sharing
lot
your
of fun.
expertise. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Come back to Oman
I
soon.
look forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.